पहले सिर्फ उन्हीं को नौकरी मिलती थी जो कांग्रेस, नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस या पीडीपी के खास होते थे। अब इस पुराने सिस्टम को फिर से लौटने नहीं देना है।
हिंदुस्तान में यूनियन टेरिटरी को स्टेट में बदला गया है, मगर पहली बार हिंदुस्तान के इतिहास में पहली बार स्टेट को यूनियन टेरिटरी यहां बनाया गया है।
जब हमने पिछली बार इलेक्शन लड़ा था, हमारी इस जमीन पे, हमारे नौकरियों पे 1,40,00,000 लोगों का हक था। आज जब हम इलेक्शन लड़ रहे हैं, इसी जमीन पे, इसी नौकरियों पे, इन्हीं दरियाओं पे, इन्हीं पहाड़ों पे अब 1,40,00,000,000 लोगों का हक बन गया है।
Jammu and Kashmir is voting to elect 90 members to its legislative assembly, an election which is being keenly watched for a number of reasons. The foremost being the militancy-hit state is witnessing assembly elections after 10 years. We are back with the Economic Times Special Elections podcast, Polls on My Pod. As Jammu and Kashmir votes in its third and final phase of election today, we deconstruct the politics and understand what are the issues turning the election. It is Tuesday, the 1st of October. From the Economic Times, I'm your host, Nidhi Sharma, and you're listening to The Morning Brief. So let's first understand the background to this election. The last assembly polls were conducted in November-December 2014, and a coalition of People's Democratic Party and BJP came to power. In June 2018, BJP withdrew support and president's rule was imposed. In 2019, in a surprise move, Article 370 of the Constitution, which gave Jammu and Kashmir special status, was abrogated. The state was split into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, with effect from 31st October 2019. Since then, the state has been under Lieutenant Governor's rule. In March 2020, a 3-member delimitation commission was formed to redraw the contours of the constituencies. The report was released on May 5, 2022, under which 6 additional seats were added to Jammu division and 1 constituency to Kashmir division. In 2023, the Supreme Court, while hearing pleas challenging abrogation of Article 370, set a deadline of September 2024 to hold elections in Jammu and Kashmir. These elections have been the shortest in the state. I have with me my colleague Anubhuti Vishnoi, who covers the Election Commission. So Anubhuti, can you tell us, there's a lot of attention on the J&K elections. What kind of poll preparations went into holding this election and how long did it all take?
Well, Nidhi, a lot of effort has gone into the conduct of the J&K election, as always is the case, especially with Jammu and Kashmir, which is security sensitive. So in this case, I'd say several months now. So it's in March 2024 that the Chief Election Commissioner visited J&K for a review. And they held meetings both in Kashmir, in Srinagar, as well as Jammu, met all political parties, all stakeholders, citizens, administrative staff, security officials. And groundswell was very decidedly in favor of holding an election. But there were lots of issues which were flagged off by both political parties and people at large. Issues like how do you conduct campaign meetings, adequate security, and for each candidate, which is a challenge, ensuring that enough campaign time is allowed, campaign meetings are allowed, preventive arrests are not such that they interfere with political activities. A whole lot of issues were raised, which the commission was seized of. But also there was a sense of doubt among the people in J&K of whether the election commission will actually go and conduct the poll. Following the parliamentary polls also, please remember there's been a string of insurgent activities, sporadic terror attacks, which did threaten to derail the process. So I would say the commission began work then, and then just ahead of parliamentary polls, there was step one, which is electoral roll preparation. There were lots of doubts and suspicions there that, it would be full of migrants and full of service voters. There was a lot of suspicion around that activity. So they went through a door-to-door approach. The chief electoral officer in Jammu and Kashmir talks a lot about it and details the kind of effort that went into it, going to every remote village to enumerate the voters, to weed out duplicates, etc. And ultimately a robust electoral roll was created for J&K after a very long time, because the last assembly election held in J&K was only 2014. And I think that was a great confidence building measure. You made a good start from there. And then, of course, the conduct of the parliamentary polls, which went very well. And we could see that in the kind of voter turnout which was registered in the Lok Sabha elections in J&K. And I think that was another big morale booster, both for the commission and gave a sense of confidence in the approach they had in J&K, the kind of people response they got.
Anubhuti, can you tell us how was the timing of the election decided?
The main reason is that the security considerations are so high for J&K in terms of the number of battalions you require to be stationed there. That availability had to be ensured from the Ministry of Home Affairs. And for that, they had to wait it out because in the summer, they couldn't do it alongside Parliament election. There was not adequate security cover. And then you have the Amarnath Yatra. So Amarnath Yatra meant another 600 companies were already in J&K. So you had to wait for the Yatra to be completed in August 19th, 18th or 19th, the Yatra was conducted. And amidst this period, between July and August, you had the spate of attacks in the Jammu region, which is a new area. About 100 plus infiltrators were there. That was a big security concern. Can you really hold elections there? And rounds of meetings were held between the MHA and EC. But what was felt was that this is the time to do it and the problem is not insurmountable. But there was a requirement of additional security. Unlike parliamentary elections, where you have fewer candidates in the fray, assembly elections, the number of candidates are more, the stakes are higher, and security threat perception is much higher. So each candidate typically requires, 7 to 8 security personnel to go campaign, which swells up the number of security personnel required for the assembly election. And only when the commission had the go-ahead and was satisfied they could bring in adequate personnel, about 1,000 companies are currently stationed in J&K, then they went ahead with the poll announcement for this. There is also, of course, the Supreme Court order, which had said by September 30th, we should have the assembly elections conducted in J&K. If you also look at the calendar of the J&K election, it's a short 3-phase election, which is very, very rare in J&K. Usually, you had 5-7 phases. If I look at the Lok Sabha elections, 5 phases, right, in Kashmir. If you look at 2014 was 5 phases. I think 2008 is 7 phases. Polls were held in J&K. 2002 also 4 phases. So it's, I think, one of the shortest calendar in all is just 40 days from the day nominations were invited, which is like August 21 to when we'll close election, it's 40-45 days. So it's a short window. And within 15 days, you're conducting the 3 phases of election, which is very interesting in itself. And we've kept it tight, kept it secure that way.
So what does this signify, Anubhuti, having such a short-phased election? Does it indicate that the security aspect is better managed?
I think it was a security call taken that it's better to keep it tight and not let it spill onto too long a period. Conduct the election quickly. We see also the first phase has actually started with the area which saw a lot of trouble recently. So we did that in first phase itself. So I think once that was done, they felt more confident that they can, go ahead and do it. And also, if you look, each phase is a combination of both the Kashmir Valley as well as the Jammu region. So it had been scheduled in such a way that, the movement of forces can be planned accordingly.
So Anubhuti, the most vital question is, how has the voter turnout been compared to 2014 elections? And is there something we can read in it? First phase, second phase together, and first and the second phase, because we know the second phase saw a slight dip.
True, Nidhi. Of course, voter turnout is always interestingly watched in any state, more so in J&K. So we've got phase 1 at 61%, which is pretty good and in line with both 2014 and 2008 elections. Now, phase 2, as you correctly pointed out, we've seen a slight dip. It's 57.4%. Basically, it's come down because of Srinagar, which has seen only about 29.8% voter turnout, which is certainly lower. than usual. But I'd like to point out it is actually in keeping with trends in Srinagar. Srinagar has not been reporting high voter turnout for a very long time. If I look at it, 2014 Srinagar district had 27.8%. Lok Sabha, they had 26% voter turnout. And go back to 2017 bypoll, the parliamentary seat of Srinagar, when Farooq Abdullah finally won that seat, that bypoll saw just 7.14% turnout. At some places where repoll had to be held, it was just 2%. So I'm not extremely shocked with the lower turnout in Srinagar. Usually there has been a reluctant voter in Srinagar, in the downtown area, has traditionally seen a lower turnout. But yes, a better turnout was expected and hoped for, and would have been better if you look at an overall turnout. If I look at the overall turnout between phase 1 and phase 2, I would still hold my horses and wait for phase 3 to be completed to get an overall figure. In 2014, we know the overall turnout in J&K was 66%. And Lok Sabha, we had 58.4%. Both were pretty decent.
A lot has changed in the last 10 years since the 2014 elections. But why is this election important? In a way, it is being seen as a referendum on the centre's decision to abrogate Article 370. In the run-up to the assembly elections, all parties have promised to restore statehood if elected. My senior colleague Hakeem Irfan travelled extensively through the state to bring us ground reports. Today, he will tell us about the politics, electoral issues, and why are we talking about Engineer Rashid and his Awami Ittihad party. Welcome to the show, Irfan.
Good morning, Nidhi. Thanks for having me.
So, Irfan, the assembly elections are happening after a gap of about 10 years, and a lot has changed. So could you tell us first in terms of the delimitation exercise, and then we will move on to the politics?
So the elections were much awaited because the 10 years of gap has created a bureaucratic setup that people were not happy with, and they had nobody to go to. Despite the fact, and people know it and have acknowledged during the first two phases of the elections, that they know the assembly that is now going to come up after the elections is weak. The representatives are not as powerful. And despite that, they say that they need somebody that they can go and talk to about their issues. When we say that this is also the first election after the abrogation of article and delimitation exercise, what delimitation exercise has done in J&K, couple of things have happened. One is the boundaries or have been redrawn, which has also changed the demographic of each constituency, both in the assemblies as well in the Lok Sabha. And also, just before this election, the government brought some of the amendments to the Reorganization Act, which gave more powers to the Lieutenant Governor, be it public order, be it the police or the All India services. So overall, this election is happening in this background. And with all of these changes happening at the constitutional or the legal level, which have been opposed by the parties in Kashmir Valley, welcomed by the people in Jammu initially, but now they're also unhappy. So this is the context that this election is happening.
So Irfan, tell us how the contours of the political map have changed.
After the delimitation exercise, 7 seats were increased, and 6 of them were increased in the Jammu division and 1 in Kashmir division. So with this increase in the number of seats, the gap between the Jammu and the Kashmir has reduced to 3 seats. So now, after the delimitation exercise, the Kashmir Valley now has 47 seats, while the Jammu will have 43 seats. You have to understand that this is what BJP government has tried to exploit and say that they want to make the Jammu region, which consists of the plains of the Jammu, the Pir Panchal Valley and the Chenab Valley. They want to make the regions wise here. After this delimitation exercise, 16 seats were reserved, 9 for the scheduled tribes and 7 for the scheduled caste. And when we say how will this play out in the elections, the government also included Pahadi community, which make a very good chunk of our population. They included them in the ST status, which riled up the Gujar Bakarwal community. But the fact is that the BJP wants to cash in all these changes they have made, both demographically in the constituencies and also by bringing in Pahadis in the ST, giving scheduled castes 7 seats in the assembly. They want to cash in on those changes and ensure that they somehow are relevant in the government formation in J&K.
So, for a layman, Irfan, deconstruct the politics of JNK in terms of which party has held sway in which region.
So in Kashmir Valley, you will see that majorly National Conference, People's Democratic Party, in the pro-election political group, they are the parties who have influence in majority of the seats. Then there are small parties who have come up, like the People's Conference, who had got 2 seats in the last elections, and then there is this recently formed Apni Party, and then these parties keep blaming each other for being close to New Delhi and all. And in Jammu, we have seen majorly which National Conference had some sway in the Pir Panchal and the Chenab areas, but in mainland plains of the Jammu, we saw that earlier Congress held the sway, but then BJP slowly made the inroads and they got 25 seats in the last assembly elections. So essentially, as when we redraw this map in from the 2024 perspective, we can see that in Jammu, BJP is somehow influential with pockets of influence for the Congress, and in Kashmir, we'll see NC and PDP are the major stakeholders in the pro-election political camp, and rest of the parties have some kind of 1 or 2 influential areas for them. So this is the larger political scene in context of the ongoing assembly elections.
So, Irfan, you have traveled all across JNK and written very in-depth pieces for us. Tell us, what are the major issues turning this election? And are there some issues that are different between the Jammu region and Kashmir Valley?
Yes, Nidil. Almost the concerns about the inflation, unaffordable electricity bills, unemployment, and in Kashmir region, a major emerging concern of drug abuse. And one of the major and important concerns in Kashmir Valley is people who are in jails. And the political parties raked up the issue of Article 370 and 35A. All the parties except BJP have promised that they will help in restoration of Article 370, or they will strive for the restoration. But people on ground were saying that they are aware that the assembly they are electing is too weak to make any of those changes. And when we move to Jammu, in Jammu, I met one of the voters, and he was in line, and coincidentally, he knew Urdu. When I asked him that when article was abrogated, Article 370, you were happy, and you celebrated it. You said that things have changed. They said that yes, we believed that article abrogation will change the fate of the whole region, especially Jammu. But he quoted Mir Taqi Mir's couplet. नाहक हम मजबूरों पर ये तहमत है मुख्तारी की चाहते हैं सो आप करें और हमको अबस बदनाम किया. So people of Jammu are feeling hurt. They are saying that BJP promised stars and skies for them, but on ground nothing has changed for them.
So now I'll move to the politics of it. Irfan, tell us about the alliances and how are they stacked?
You'll see that in a pre-poll seat sharing arrangement, the National Conference and the Congress, they entered into an arrangement in which in this 90-member assembly, and National Conference is fighting on 51 or 52 seats. Congress is fighting on 32 seats, and they have kept 1 seat each reserved in Kashmir and in Jammu for the CPIM and in Jammu for the Panthers Party. And there was a friendly contest on the 5 seats because the 2 parties couldn't get an idea who to field from the respective sides, and or from both the parties in these places there were strong candidates. For example, in Banihal, where Congress fielded its former JNK chief Viqar Rasool Wani, while National Conference fielded Sajjad Shaheen. So there's a friendly contest on the 5 seats. Although the contest was not friendly on the ground, but the coalition termed it as a friendly contest. So this is the coalitions between the National Conference and the Congress. So in this coalition, the National Conference is hopeful of doing well in Kashmir Valley, and the Congress is hopeful of doing well in Jammu region, and then they have the idea of forming the government. And other than that, BJP is fighting the elections on its own, and they want to get the majority of the seats in the Jammu division. They are hopeful of winning an account in Kashmir Valley, but which is very unlikely, although their vote share might increase a little. And then we talk about other parties. For example, JNK People's Conference of Sajjad Lone, who was part of the PDP-BJP government and was a minister in the last government on the BJP quota, is fighting the elections alone. Apni Party, which was formed after abrogation of Article 370. They are fighting this election alone. And then there are a lot of other people, independent candidates and parties who have fought. Interestingly, Awami Ittihad Party of Engineer Rashid, who won the last Lok Sabha elections and got around 4.75 or 5 lakh votes, he has fielded candidates in this election. Then there is this select panel of Jamaat Islami who have self-claimed that they are in touch with Delhi for the revocation of ban, because Jamaat Islami is banned since 2019. So they are supporting some of the candidates on ground in Kashmir Valley. If and when these small parties or these candidates, if and when they win from any of the constituencies, especially in the Kashmir Valley, they may become relevant in the final government formation after the results are announced on October 8.
So, Irfan, help me understand, why are we talking about Awami Ittihad Party and Engineer Rashid? Because not just because he defeated a former chief minister, apparently his meetings are really attracting people. So tell us about him and how big a factor is he?
Just before the last Lok Sabha elections, when his son came out with the information that his father is going to contest the Lok Sabha elections from Baramulla constituency in northern Kashmir, I mean, nobody took him seriously initially. They thought that, okay, this is just a wild decision from the jail Engineer Rashid has taken, because he's lodged in Tihar jail. He's currently out on interim bail, and he's lodged in Tihar jail in an illegal money transaction case. So everybody thought that he won't make an impact. But when his son Abrar came out for the campaign just before the Lok Sabha elections, I think 2 or 3 weeks before the Lok Sabha elections were slaughtered in northern Kashmir, people started gathering around. And when we talked to people, they were very emotional about it. They said that this guy is in jail, and if this vote will help him to come out of the jail, we will vote him. But when we saw the first 2 phases in South and the Central Kashmir, the voters didn't actually vote for the candidates or had no resonance in this election. It helped him in the Lok Sabha elections, but in this election in the South and the Central Kashmir, there was no resonance. But he's banking on the electorate in the Northern Kashmir, which is also his native area. So he's banking on some of the seats there. But I think it won't translate into him in a massive way. He was the only guy who was in the assembly from his party who was in the assembly. So even if he managed to get a couple of seats or 3 seats, he should be happy. We should not expect, although people say that he expects 5 to 10 seats and emerge as a kingmaker, but I think he should be happy with anything more than 2 seats.
So are you saying, Irfan, that at the end of it, this election is really between the traditional players, BJP alone, PDP alone, and NC and Congress in a coalition?
Many of the Congress leaders have hinted at the coalition, even though there is some confusion within the India bloc, but some people still consider PDP part of the opposition, larger opposition of the India bloc. So they are saying that there is a possibility that after this elections, there might be a possibility that PDP will go with the NC and the BJP and they will form the government if PDP manage to get some good seats. I'm not saying it is majorly between the traditional parties. But what we have to keep an option open is that if these small parties in Kashmir Valley and independents get some seats, and somehow the bigger parties manage, either the Congress and the NC coalition or the BJP from their side wants to influence these small candidates and then get them on their sides, there might be some surprise government that will be formed in the J&K after October 8. Essentially, it is between the traditional parties, but now if they fall short of the majority mark, so they will look for the options here and there.
So more things change, more they remain the same. Irfan tells us that it is really a fight involving the traditional players, National Conference, PDP, Congress, and BJP. The reports from the state clearly show that the youth are angry and unemployment is a major issue. Will it be another hung house or a decisive mandate? We will have to wait till October 8th. This is all we have for you today. I'm your host, Nidhi Sharma, signing off. This episode was brought to you by sound designer Rajas Nayak and producer Neil Ghai. Executive producers Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Barman. Thank you for listening, and if you like this episode, do spread the word. All new episodes of the Morning Brief podcast drop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And, of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great week ahead. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits mentioned in the description.